Welcome to 9wax TV here at Harbour Cars. We've got a cracking video coming up where we're going to be answering a commonly asked question among Porsche enthusiasts. 718 Cayman S, 981 Cayman S, which is the better buy for your £40,000? All right then, so I mentioned this is a popular topic of conversation. The team at Harbour Cars actually tell me this is the most commonly asked question they're faced with on a weekly basis from their stock. There's a real overlap between the 718 and 981 Cayman generations in terms of pricing. So it's a super interesting question, particularly as the market has pitted these together currently. So we're going to explore that in a bit of detail today. The 981 replaced the original Cayman platform in the 987 in 2013. And then by 2017, the 718 platform replaced the 981. So how do they differ top level? Well, the 718, essentially, over the 981, has more power, more torque and more weight. Arguably more tech as an updated car, but the 981 really pulls at the heartstrings in terms of purity. Another interesting fact, the 981 platform was made in Osnabrück at the VW factory. The 718, though, was bought in line with the 911, which is made at Zuffenhausen. Now really, the 718 builds on what's great about the 981, but there is a key difference. The 981 is a naturally aspirated 6-cylinder Porsche sports car. The 718 went to 4 cylinders, these early models, and adopted turbocharging as well. Quite a different proposition. So which is better? Let's head out on the road and find out.
Right, it's going to be about 80 that moment.
Now the 981 represented a big shake-up over the 987 before it, but we're not here to compare the 981 to the 987, we're comparing the 981 to the 718. And in order to do that, we need to get a bit of a flavour as to how this thing drives 12 years after its release. Oh, that really is wonderful. Well, the good news is the 981 Cayman has always been highly thought of. It really was a smash hit as soon as it was released. All of the right updates took place to make this a really brilliant sports car and a multifaceted tool. And actually, the 981 platform was the start of the Cayman winning multiple Sports Car of the Year awards. With that in mind, I think we can pop this into Sport now, which instantly on the PDK mapping system knocks us down a cog. These cars were so popular from new, and to be honest, they're still pretty popular now. For a 12-year-old Cayman to still cost you the best part of 40k outside of a GTS as well, might I add, is pretty sensational and a really good marker of how highly these cars are thought of by enthusiasts. And as Rob and Chris and the team at Harbour Cars have just been telling me off camera, these cars have always been good news for Harbour Cars, and that's why they've always got a healthy stock of 981 Cayman and Boxsters, base, S and GTS cars. You can take a look at all of those, by the way, on the 9wax marketplace, where they all come with 12 months warranty to boot. That really does sound fantastic. The 981 generation GTS cars, Cayman and Boxster, they have such a glorious flat six soundtrack to them. They're probably one of the best sounding modern Porsche sports cars for my money outside of any GT product. They kind of really throaty howl to them. I tell you what, this S isn't far off that at all. It sounds sensational. Oh, I really like that. Yes, really like that. Actually, the soundtrack of the 981 has always been one of its strong points, and I have to say, 12 years on, it's still so pleasing to listen to. That really is a sensational soundtrack. I could honestly listen to that all day. That is fantastic. So the sound is a big win already. I'm enjoying the engine as well. I've read things elsewhere in like the mainstream media that the Cayman is a chassis car, and to an extent it's true. It's so well balanced, the Cayman platform, but if you're watching this you probably already know that anyway. I really do think this is an incredibly resolved package. I don't actually think you'd want any more power or torque because it encourages you to rev the engine out, which of course gives you a little bit more of that lovely sonorous flat six soundtrack. The chassis is phenomenal. Spring rates are as stiff as the Cayman R from the 987, the revered Cayman R that we love so much on this channel. Slightly stiffer at the back actually than that car. Got it in fully manual now. Oh, it's just such a good soundtrack. Really nice revvy engine, particularly when you get the revs up past 4,000 RPM. I can't quite see around these corners, so I'm gonna have to bring the speed right down. Oh, hello. Don't mess with tractors. Tractors always win. Great soundtrack. How many times have I said that on this drive? The PDK is actually a really nice pairing with this engine as well. I bet the manual is a ton of fun, but PDK, it just suits it really nicely. Gear changes are quick. There's an element of precision felt in the travel from the paddles on the steering wheel. Yes, as subsequent generations, that was sharpened up. But it doesn't mean that the gear changes here feel sloppy at all. It's, as I said, a really lovely pairing with the power. Again, that noise. Now, something on the 981 that came in for a bit of stick at the time from journalists was its electrically assisted steering. And yes, whilst it isn't as feelsome as the mechanically assisted system on the predecessor, and that kind of stacks up today. It's not the most fluid system. A lot has been filtered out, which isn't a problem per se. It actually makes the drive pretty comfortable and adds to the 981's repertoire of being a pretty good all-rounder when you want to dial things back. But when you want to push on, I'd like a little bit more feel. I'd also like a little bit less weight as well. It does feel pretty hefty, and again, where Porsche steering systems have evolved so much in subsequent years, that does make this a little bit of a shortfall, but not anything that would put me off the car, to be honest. It's pretty mind-blowing. Oh. This is so playful at sensible speeds as well. I'm astonished that these cars are only £40,000, to be honest. And where I mentioned the evolution of the 981 story, it's always been popular from launch, a really capable, all-round, multifaceted sports car. Fairly light as well, at only 1,350 kilos. The car has a lot going for it. And probably never more so than currently against the context of modern sports cars, and this is inside and outside the Porsche stable, where there's so much kind of technological creep. This, to a degree, does feel quite pure and pared back by comparison, which only adds to the 981's star. So for a light, dynamic and engaging sports car, this really does tick all the boxes. What's going to be interesting is how the 718 generation has taken the game forward. So in order for this to be a fair test, I'm going to drive the same roads as the 981 And I'm also going to go through the modes in the same way with the 718 as I did the 981. Therefore, we're starting in normal mode, suspension in its most relaxed setting, and then we'll build into sport and deploy the sport exhaust as well. So this will be a fair test. There are a lot of differences, and having only covered a couple of miles so far, I've already got a pretty good idea as to what they are and how they correlate to the drive. But let's start first of all by looking at what's changed in the 718 over the 981. We have to start with the engine. The 718 was a complete step change in the Cayman story. It utilised, for the base Cayman and the S, and indeed the Style Edition cars that followed, a 4-cylinder turbocharged engine. It's basically the flat 6 from the 911 with 2 cylinders lopped off, and with the deployment of a single turbocharger using VTG, variable turbine geometry. The technology is what's used on the turbochargers in the 911 Turbo, capital T, which gives you the best of both worlds, low down torque and little lag. Aesthetically, the outside of the car has really been sharpened up. So the 718 is definitely more chiselled externally, I would say, over the 981. Inside, I'm actually quite pleased at what I'm seeing. When I was reading the initial press release, I was dubious. It's one of those where you think, have you actually updated anything? Because the press release at the time when this car came out, which was autumn 2016 for the 2017 model year, it said the 718 has a new top part of the dashboard and new vents, which I felt lacked conviction. However, in reality, it's a really nice upgrade in here. Porsche has changed what it needed to change and left alone what it didn't need to change. So what's been left is this lovely, comfortable architecture with this kind of central console over the transmission tunnel, the infusion of a digital screen among the Cayman's 3-screen layout behind the wheel. So all of this is all the good stuff. The top part of the dash has changed. It means that on this car, which is exceptionally well specified, I have to say, has the Sport Chrono pack. The Sport Chrono clock in the 718 is set further back into the dash. There's a bit more depth to my surroundings, which is good. The vents, they have been restyled. They kind of remind me of the early TT, so I'm a big fan of that. Also, in terms of touch, the steering wheel is different. The 718 has incorporated what was originally the 918 Sport steering wheel, 3-spoke with this here mode wheel hanging off of it, and it's a far more harmonious user experience just turning this wheel than it is looking down here with a 981, which in retrospect is kind of clunky. I mean, I'm already taking my eye off the road there just to find where I am. So the right amount of improvements in here. Also, in terms of the interior with a 718, you've got this new PCM system which includes CarPlay. It's a big thing the 981 lacks. So in terms of listening to podcasts, having Waze, this is the key to all of that. So particularly if you're likely to spend a bit more time in this car, away from just purely Sunday driving, that is a big win for the 718. So let's talk about that drivetrain, shall we? So manual and PDK is available in the 718 like the 981, 6-speed manual as here, or 7-speed PDK. Stats with the engine, more power as you'd expect, another 25 horsepower. So we've got 350 horsepower in the 718 Cayman S now. Torque is up as well by 50 newton meters, so a much bigger increase to 420 newton meters. And as you'd expect, therefore, with a different engine setup, the character of the 718 Cayman is very different to the 981 before it. Perhaps best characterised by the torque. That maximum 420 newton meters is delivered between just under 2 grand right up to 4.5, so it's got a really wide peak torque. It'll still rev out, evidently with more gusto than that 981, which, as I've just said, you have to really work with that car to really kind of cover some ground, which is fun, makes the car really engaging on the public road. But there's no question, I'm already seeing that with a 718 it's just a much faster car point to point, while still enjoying a terrific chassis. The 718 is definitely built quite handsomely on the 981, and the steering has been tweaked in a number of ways. It's still electrically assisted. It's faster though. It's got a much better weighting to it, i.e. it's a little bit lighter. and it's just a bit more fluid, to be honest. There is a big difference between the two cars, with this being manual and the other being PDK. I said the PDK really suited the S. The manual here adds a different dimension. It's a really nice gear change. So that's it in normal mode. Let's turn the wick up a little, put it in sport, which doesn't change the mapping because I have a manual car rather than PDK. But it does change throttle response. Ooh. And the way this car revs, and that really is quite a step up again. It's a very, very, very fast point-to-point car, and smoother than the 981 as well. I think that's something the 718's reviews have possibly overlooked so far. There's just more of a fluidity to the 718 in terms of its touch points. Having the sport exhaust button on hasn't really done a lot so far in terms of giving an uplift to the tone or indeed the sound of the sport exhaust. And sound, it is the Achilles heel of the 718 generation, the four-cylinder cars at least, and it's hard to argue against it even today. However, what I will say is I don't believe it's enough of a reason to not buy these cars. Everything else is so good about it. The chassis is definitely more resolved, and as I said previously, it's an incredibly fast car point to point. So yes, while it does lack in the sound department, I don't think it's the be-all and end-all. PASM turned on. If we keep it off, I think it just keeps the car nice and supple. Again, playing into what we love about Caymans in the modern world is its size, how nimble the car feels. The 718 is heavier than the 981 by 70 kilos. It tips the scales at 1,420 kilos, but it doesn't feel anywhere near that on the road, to be honest. Even opening the 718 door immediately after the 981 door, the 718 door felt light to open. And again, the turbocharger does a great job of picking this thing up and chucking it down the road. With the mastering of the steering in terms of delicacy over the 981, there's nothing to suggest this car feels unduly heavier than the 981. There we have it then. That is the head-to-head between the 981 and the 718. Two absolutely fantastic sports cars, might I add. This head-to-head kind of reminds me of 996 versus 997 in the 911 world. It's not really about one being superior to the other, it's just about which is the right choice for you. Having digested these cars on the road today, the positives that I can attribute to each car is as follows. Whereas the 981 is all about sound, the 718 is all about speed. The 718 is a master of modernity, whereas the 981 is a master of purity. Either way, the fact that both of these can be had for £40,000 perhaps really is the greatest revelation, particularly the 718, considering how new it is. Either way, so long as you're buying the right car for you and your lifestyle, either of these cars make great purchases, and one there whereby you're not really going to lose any money for the next 5 years or so of motoring, in my opinion. I hope you found this video useful. Thanks to the team at Harbour Cars for allowing us to drive both of these. It really has been a fantastic exercise in looking at two brilliant Porsche sports cars to be had for as little as 40k. Thanks very much for watching IMAX TV. We'll see you soon.